speaking. I guess I'm here to talk about issues in leadership and management, the things that I feel that are issues that go on through the teams that I have dealt with over the years. And so I'm going to pick out a few that I really try to emphasize with my own teams. And but there are, as you know, issues crop up all the time. There's always something. There's guys that don't want to go along. You don't get the buy-in that you want. The management puts a lot of pressure on you. There's just a lot of issues that go on. But I'm going to pick a few. But before I start, I'm going to show you this to get going. Let me set this up for a minute. This was our championship with Baralco, who Alpha Lidio will remember very well. The thing to remember is that he never had not won a championship in 8 years prior to this moment. As you can see, the score is 88-88. There's 5 seconds left in the basketball game, and this is game 6. We have a 3 games to 2 lead. We did not want to go into a game 7. We just did not want to go into a winner-take-all game 7. So this was a very important moment for us. And as you see, this is what happened. This is called the shot. Oops. I think the thing that most grabs me when I watch that, and it still gives me goosebumps, but when I look at that, I don't see that moment in terms of winning the championship. I think of all that it took to get to that championship, not being able to win, over 8 years, and then we came to the team, we had to build it, we had to develop it, and so we oftentimes look at that event as being the game. I use our friend Manny Pacquiao as an example. We always see him in his ring trying to win his world championships, and we all get elated when we see him knock somebody down or raise his hands in victory. But we forget everything it took for him to get to that point. From a small boy, growing up, going to the gyms, having different coaches, going through everything that he did for those moments. So this quote, champions don't become champions in the ring, they are merely recognized. They become champions long before they are actually crowned a champion. So I had an opportunity to actually coach 4 different teams. I've been with 4 different professional teams in my career, starting back in 1999 with Alaska. And each team I came into had its own issues, had unique challenges. And for Alaska, when I came in, they were an expansion team in 1989. I had 9 players who were older than me on the team at that point. I had guys like Nagbigay, Yo-Yo Diamin, Ricky Velosa, DeRay Lazo. If you remember those names, you are getting old, I'll tell you that. But we knew immediately when we approached that team that we were going to have to get younger. We were going to have to take the old and get younger. We would not only get young, but we'd have to get young talent. And so over 2 or 3 years, we changed those names into, by trade, Jojo Lastimosa, Kenneth Durandez, Bohm Hawkins, names that were really synonymous with Alaska. And then we drafted Johnny Alvarientos, Jeffrey Cariaso, Bart Swinyo, and over that time, within a year or two after that, we went to 11 finals appearances in 12 conferences. So 11 times we went to the finals. We won 8 championships, including the Grand Slam in 1996. So there was a recognition of what we had to do, and it took great patience through the years and great perseverance of going up and down. In fact, I started coaching in 1989. In 1993, my boss, Fred Retensu, took me to lunch and fired me. And then by the end of the lunch, he rehired me. So, but coaches can talk themselves into anything, right? So I was rehired, but then again, that was the ups and downs that we had just to get to that point. Then, after 22 years, I left the lab. Completely different situation. I remember walking into the first practice of Pure Foods, and the first guy I see is James Yap. I mean, probably one of the most talented players we've had in our history. So it was a very talented team. I had James Yap sitting there, and then a little bit further on, I had B.J. Simon, and then a little further on, Kirby Raimundo. A little beyond that was some of the Phil M's. Beyond that was Mark Pincus. And they were super talented. But that was the problem, is that they were here, and they were there, and they were there, and they were there. They were not together. And we had a team that struggled over the last 2 years. They had chemistry issues. Kirby and James Jack would not speak to each other at that point. And we just really that was our issue, trying to create a team that could come together. And so that's the issue we had with Pure Foods. After a year, we won our first championship, and then the following year, again, we won the Grand Slam in 2014. But it was very different from the Alaska issue that we had. And then, after 5 years, I was moved. I went into a boardroom with our Mr. RSA, and he told me that I was transferring to Endeavor. And I go, I am? And I didn't really want to leave at that point. I remember that because I walked out with Mr. Leo, who was the president of Pure Foods, after the meeting. And I asked Mr. Leo, is there any way I can say no to this? Can I stay with Pure Foods? He looked at me and goes, absolutely not. So I was moved on to Ginebra. And the thing we found with Ginebra, I think the first thing we found in Ginebra, that they had such great expectations. Like we said, they hadn't won a championship in 8 years, but they had that huge fan support. And there was a sense that players felt like there was just this big monkey on their back that they couldn't get rid of. And so we had to deal with expectations. And the bottom line is, we got them focused not on the event, not on trying to win a championship, but just staying with the process, being process-oriented. And I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But that's how we got over the hump with Endeavor. And then, just recently, I've been able, I was there in the early 90s. I coached Gila's national team. But the issue with Gila's is that, and it's still ongoing with us, is that we have very small preparation time. So we've got to get a lot done in a small period of time. And then it was the idea of trying to get the program over the hump. And we'd always go to like the World Cup, and then we played Argentina, almost beat them. We played Dominican Republic, almost beat them. We had Italy, almost beat them. We just couldn't quite get over the hump, but we played great. And we would be right in the game all the way through. In fact, we'd be leading most of the game, and then we weren't able to get over the hump. So that's been the challenge for Gilas, is trying to get over the hump. And in some small ways so far, we have made some leaps. We beat Latvia. We won the Asian Games. We've done a few things, but we still don't feel like we've really, our goal, as Mr. Palillo has mentioned, is to become a statement in the world stage. That's what we want to be able to do. We want to be part of the world stage. We want to be talked about in the world stage. And that's really our goal, what we're trying to overcome. So you can see, again, all 4 different ways in which I guess the point I'm trying to make is that not every team has the same problems or issues. You're going to come against each one. Each team or group you work with, there's going to be issues in that group. And each one has to be dealt with as it goes. But something that's common to all is something that I've realized, and I think sometimes leaders, managers, they miss on it. And that's the idea and the importance of developing a culture. I'm really big into culture. I think the NBA right now, if you follow the NBA at all, their teams always talk about culture. And exactly what do you mean by culture? How do you establish or develop a culture? Well, I'm going to get some help here. I'm going to try to get some help here. There he is. Steve Kerr is going to try to help me out. He's going to tell me a little bit, going to explain to you how we got it. Now let me again set this one up. He's going to talk about a football coach named Pete Carroll. In this video, he's going to talk about before he became the Golden State Warriors coach, he went around the United States and visited with different coaches that he appreciated and knew, and to pick their brains, to figure out what would be the best way to coach his team. So he ended up going to a guy named Pete Carroll, who was a famous football coach, American football coach, coached at USC, University of Southern California, won a national championship there, and then went to Seattle Seahawks and won an NFL championship there. So he goes and visits Pete Carroll, and this is what he says about that.
Well, before I started coaching, I visited a few other coaches. One of them was Pete Carroll. Went and saw him during training camp in Seattle, and he was great. He pulled me aside. I was sitting in on all the coaches' meetings, watching practices, and he pulls me aside on the second day I'm there, and he goes, "So how are you going to coach your team?" I said, "You mean like what offense am I going to run?" He goes, "No, that stuff doesn't really matter." He goes, "How are you going to coach your team?" I go, "Well, what does that even mean?" He goes, "What are the players going to feel when they walk into the building every day? What's the vibe? What's the culture? Like, how are you going to just determine like what they feel when they walk into the building every day?" And that started this conversation where he basically laid it out, and it was an incredible story. But he said he had coached at the NFL for 4 years, a couple years with New England, a couple years with the Jets, gets fired, comes here to San Francisco as a coach with the Niners, and he said at the end of every day he'd go and sit with Bill Walsh. And he said Bill Walsh taught him about culture, and he said that Bill Walsh told him, "You got to figure out who you are. What are the values that make you who you are? And those values have to become the culture, but you got to figure out how to make those values come alive. They can't just be words on the wall." So Pete was explaining all this. It made so much sense because I had felt that in San Antonio with Bob, Chicago with Phil, but nobody had ever sort of expressed it that way.
So basically what he was saying, I don't know if you caught all that, it was a little bit muffled, but basically what he was saying is that these 3 ideas, when he talks about culture, number 1, how are the players going to feel when they walk into your gym? I mean, how are they going to feel? Are they going to feel like, are they going to be optimistic? Are they going to feel like they're growing? Are they going to feel they have a future? Are they, in terms of how are they going to feel when they walk in? And that is what dictates your culture. What's the vibe? What's the culture? And then what are the values? And that's the important one. What are the values that make you you? That make you who you are? And from those values, those are the ones that you're going to impart on your team and develop your culture. So, and then and once you get those values, well, what are those values and how they come alive? And so, again, let me just take you one more through here and one more through, just a short one here with Steve again.
So yours values are competitiveness, mindfulness, compassion, and joy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So his values are competitiveness, mindfulness, compassion, and joy. Those are his 4 core values that he wants to impart on his team. When their team comes into practice, they want to be thinking about this. They want to be competitive. They want to have mindfulness, and that's given really from Phil Jackson. Phil Jackson used to talk about mindfulness, the coach of the Chicago Bulls and the Los Angeles Lakers. And then he has compassion, and the thing that always gets people is that the last one, joy. He figures that basketball is a game. They want them to have fun and enjoy the game and have joy in the competition. Well, let me show you this one, and now let me show you this one from the Miami Heat. If you could see, Eric Spoelstra is in the middle with 2 of my really good friends, but he is in the middle right there. And you notice his shirt that he has? Culture. And he wears that shirt, and Miami lives their culture all the time. And it's interesting because it's so opposite from the Warriors. Look at theirs. Grit, dedication, perseverance, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. And I had the opportunity to go and coach with the Miami Heat as an assistant coach in their summer league program in Las Vegas a couple of years ago. And I tell you, I didn't believe it. You know, I said nobody could be like that, but they are hard driving. They drive their team really hard. And I thought I'd go to Las Vegas and, hang out, do some things, maybe walk, just be able to just kind of like take a little vacation. They worked me to the bone. I was working 8, 9 hours a day on video action. I mean, they were hard driving. I remember walking into a meeting and one of the players had a hat on, and one of the assistant coaches grabbed the hat and threw it across the room and said, "We don't have hats here." And I went to practice and I had my shirt on top. And the first thing they told me, "Put your shirt in." So I had to tuck my shirt in. I mean, they are down to their outfits, their socks. They are just, culture is everything to them. And they are really proud about it. They talk about it all the time. And they always say, you have to be special to be able to exist in the Miami Heat culture. So you can see Steve Kerr, joy, compassion, here, perseverance, dedication, get dirty, be a dirtbag basically with that team. So that one, and then this is ours. He never had 4 core values. Or I could say it with Alaska, I could say it with Pure Foods, I could say it with Gills. These are the same things that we are working on all the time. And this is basically comes from me as a leader, and I'm trying to impart it and make it come alive to the players. And I have my own reasons. I'm a defensive first coach. And the reason I'm a defensive first coach is because I believe defense represents your character. Because you don't get credit for defense. Everybody watches you shoot, make a nice pass, but nobody really comments on your individual defense. And so that defines the character. What you do when nobody's looking, when nobody's watching you. So we want a character-driven team. That's foremost. And if someone's not going to be into that, then we'll lower our talent level to get higher character. Because we believe that when it comes down to it, there's a ceiling on talent. There's an absolute ceiling. You can't get beyond your talent. That's there. The only way to get beyond your talent is to have character. It moves you up beyond your talent. So we want a character-driven team. We feel like that takes us to our highest level. Attention to detail. I think I'm kind of proud about this. Every ex-player that I've had who has talked about our program or what we've done in our team has always talked about how much details they have to deal with when they're on our team. We have a very big detailed system in the triangle, and there's a lot of details that goes on to make it work, and you have to lock into those details all the time. You have to lock into the repetitions all the time. And if you're not, it's not going to evolve and get to a better. So that kind of permeates through everything that we do. Because we have to do it there for offense, we have to do it there in our defense, and goes into everything, our weight training, everything. And so attention to detail. Compassion, empathy is important to us. We want our guys to be compassionate to each other. We're not looking to be, notice it's not competitive, it's actually compassion. And that's why we feel we don't use the word compete in practice, we use the word challenge in practice. We want our guys to challenge each other. If I challenge you as hard as I can and do the best I can, what's going to happen to him? He's going to get better. All right? If he challenges me back, and I'm going to be, and he works me as hard as I can be worked, then I'm going to get better. And that permeates through the whole team. We compete. The reason we compete is when we get into games, when we play out. But in practice, we challenge. We don't like winners and losers. We only want winners. And that's why we challenge in practice. And the last one, which I'll talk about a little bit more, is accountability. Phil Jackson, I think one of his favorite quotes is, the team itself, again, the team itself leads the team. In other words, if you can get accountability, I don't want just accountability from player to me. I don't want to make everybody, once I can get accountability from player to player or teammate to teammate, that's when we all jump to a whole level. And that has to do with habits, it has to do with clarity, and again, I'll talk about that a little later. Let's see where. So, basically, that one issue that I talked about is culture. That's the one, I think, the foremost one, the biggest one. You have to be able to develop a culture, whether it be in your basketball team, whether it be in your company, in your business. There has to be a culture amongst your employees. And again, how do they feel? And it starts with the 4 core values that come in. Aside from that, I think that we have a tendency to be too event-oriented, or, I should say here, results-oriented. I'm absolutely huge on process. I just don't see how you can get anything done and get to reach a goal or reach a vision unless you have process. So we always overestimate the event and underestimate the process. We talk a lot about winning a championship, winning a gold medal, being, if you can, if I may, I'm not a businessman, but reaching a certain goal in sales or doing a certain, reaching our goals. And we get locked into that and we forget about the importance of the process. Talking about Manny Pacquiao, that idea, the process of him getting to that world championship. So we want to be world. So I said this in, I don't know if Al Panilla will remember this, but we were in a press conference. I don't remember a press conference. I think 2 days before we left, 2 or 3 days before we left for China. And I said, they were asking me, so do you expect to win a gold medal when you go there? We hadn't won a gold medal in 61 years, 62 years, 61 years. And they were asking me, do you expect to win a gold medal? And I said, well, our focus is to win a gold. All right? And they all kind of laughed. They kind of snickered and laughed. Yeah, we had put that team together very hastily. It didn't look like it was going to be a team that could compete. But I said, hey, we don't go into the PBA saying, well, my goal is to be third place, or my goal is to be fourth place. My goal is to come in every conference is to win a championship, no matter how good or bad we are. That's our goal. But that's not our focus. Our focus is what we do day to day to reach that goal. Our focus is what we're going to do today in practice. I had practice this morning. What's our focus there? All right? And what are we going to do day to day to get better? So, and we end up, I don't know how we did it, but we end up winning the gold medal after 61 years. This is another football coach, and this is what he says, and I love this quote. We're not going to talk about what we're going to accomplish. We're not going to talk about what we're going to accomplish. We're not going to worry about that gold medal or that championship. All right? The only thing we're going to talk about is how we're going to do it. That's only going to be focused on our mind. And let me just tell you his definition. He's very, very well known for his process-oriented teams. But if you don't know Nick Saban, he was probably the greatest college football coach of all time, and never went to the NFL because he didn't want to, but he probably would have been the greatest coach of all time, not in the NFL. But this is what he says. This is what he says about culture. About process. Excuse me.
Well, the process to me is just a definition of the things that you have to do to accomplish the goals that you have. So, obviously, if you don't have any goals or aspirations or sense of purpose in your life, then how do you define the process of what you have to do to accomplish that? So that becomes the most important thing. What are your goals? What's your visions? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to do? And then define exactly what you have to do to do it. And then the next thing is, how do I have to edit my behavior to be able to do it?
So again, if you didn't quite catch it, these are the things he says. You have, number one, you have to define your goals. What's your vision? If you don't have goals, you don't have a vision, then there's no need for processing. You're not going anywhere. But you have to define your goals and what's your vision. Then you have to define what you have to do to get there. So you define what you do to get to that thing. And that is actually your process. So very simple, right? Simple. But that's not the hard part. The next one is the hard part. How you edit your behavior to follow that process. And that's what a leader has to decide. So I go into practice every day. I have to decide what kind of habits or what kind of things we need to do to get ourselves ready for each basketball game. And then how much as we go along, are the habits improving and getting better? And do we keep rising up to a certain level? So I have to edit the behavior of our players. One of the things that I do when I usually come to a new team, I'll ask one of the players, I'll ask Rafi Rivas. I spoke to I did this to Rafi Rivas, a player from Pure Foods. He was a Filipino American. And I asked him, so Rafi, how many coaches have you had in your career? And he looked at me and goes, I don't know. I said, well, think about it. He goes, well, I don't know, maybe, I said, all the way back from junior high school, all the way from high school to college, pros, how many coaches he said? He finally guessed about 22 coaches. He said 22 coaches in his career. And I said, well, each one taught you something, right? Each one taught you something different. And he goes, yeah. So I said, there's all different ways to do things. So the key is not that finding the perfect way, the good way, the right way to do things. For us, the idea is that we all want to do things the same way. So we're going to teach this way. I had another player, an import, who played for a guy named Rick Pitino. And to show you the opposite, Rick Pitino was a famous coach in college, a coach in the NBA. he came to Manila as an import. And whenever we tried to do something in practice, he would say, no. That's not the way Rick Pitino would do it. And I go, well, this is the way we're going to do it. He goes, no, I won't. You know, Rick Pitino said to do it this way. And we had this battle all conference long about this guy who would only do what Rick Pitino, get into the game, he'd only do what Rick Pitino did, and he wouldn't do anything that we did. And I'm not saying that I was a better coach than Rick Pitino, but what I'm trying to say is that if we're going to do things, we need to do it all together. We can't have one guy doing it like Rick Pitino, another guy doing it like, you know, Phil Jackson, another guy doing it like Steve Kerr. We got to be able to come together and do it as a group. So it's on me to edit the behavior of the players to try to get into things. And I'll talk again a little bit more about that. So, but then the next level is, do you have the discipline to do it, the process, every day? Think about it. I mean, how many people have been on, have tried to lose weight? I don't even need to see, I'm sure everybody can put their hand up. All right? And you have like diets and things you need to do. And so you get into a diet, you get it off the internet, you know, maybe off the reel, guys telling you what to do, just, you know, get those 6 packs, you know. And I got 1 pack. And so, and I've been there, and you're so gung-ho, let's do this is the process, we're gonna do this, and then you do it for the first day, you do it for the second day, by the 3rd day, 4th day, you're eating cookies and ice cream again. Do you have the discipline to do it every day? And that's the hard part. And that's, again, where it comes in from the issues of leaders, of understanding process and how hard it is, and keep it going. So through those things, I'm jumping to another one. I jumped too fast, but through those ideas of creating those habits, creating the proper habits, so that you can stay with the thing. Anybody read the book Atomic Habits? The idea of 1% better every day. We talk a lot about that with our team. We want us to get 1% better every day. Atomic habits, that means little things lead to big results. You have a habit now. If you keep that habit down the line, a big result will happen from that tiny habit that you have now. And it's the idea of getting that 1% better. So when we talk about, I'm going to jump to accountability now. When we talk about accountability, we have our simple formula out there. And that's our simple formula for accountability. Think about it. Clarity plus habits. All right? Clarity plus habits equals accountability. If you have someone in your organization who wants to, you instruct them or tell them to do something, and it's not clear, and they go off and do something different, can you blame them for doing something different? If you did not make it clear to them, you just said, you know, go change the light bulb. Well, the problem was there were no available light bulbs available. So he had to go somewhere else and do it. By the time he did it, it was too late or whatever. Can you blame him for that? You know, so you have to be able to make it clear. So this is my thing. I think 100% of all coaches can tell you what to do. I can tell you what to do. I can tell you, Mr. Benedetto, go set a ball screen. And he may or may not know how to do that. But I can tell him what to do. It's easy. You can always tell somebody what to do. That's the easy part. So 100% of coaches will tell you what to do. 50% of coaches will answer the question, how? So you got the what do I do? And now the how. They have the expertise, right? I can tell you now, I can go and show you how to do that ball screen. Okay? I can tell you that you gotta set your feet in the proper thing, you gotta get a proper angle, all right? You gotta go set that ball screen, and then how you roll to the basket. I can teach you all that. All right? So 50% of coaches will teach you what and how, But the most important question to answer is the why. The why gives the vision, the why gives the buy-in. If I can explain to you and you can see it and you go, yes, that's the right way to do it. If you're going to be able to do that, if I can communicate that to you, now you're going to be totally bought in and you're going to try to do it and you're going to make yourself accountable for it because it's totally clear to you. Now, you get into a basketball game or you don't, and you don't do the repetitions where you get really good at, by down in the fourth quarter, when the game is really tight and hard, you're going to go back to your instincts of what you normally do. You're not going to stick to your habits. So again, I can't make you accountable. But if it's clear, and it's a habit, I can make you accountable for that. If you're screwing up, I can make you accountable for that. But if I'm not, and that's on me, that's not on him. I have to be able to do that. So, I went to a clinic with Quinn Snyder, another NBA coach, coaches the Atlanta Hawks, and he said this like it was nothing. He said it was like, everybody knows. And for me, it was a huge impact when I heard it. And so I wrote it down right away. And this is what he said. He says, teach what you're doing to the point of clarity. Make it clear and make it a habit, and then accountability comes. And it was like a boom, that was like an epiphany coming into my brain, coming in when I first heard that. And it's something I have lived with ever since, and I try to teach exactly that way. Be clear, make it a habit, and then you can make it accountable. And I think that's one of the things that we don't do as leaders or managers. We don't understand. We want to make people accountable, but we don't actually know the steps to make them accountable. And we have a tendency to blame. And this is the next one that I want to talk about, blame. Blame deflects responsibility. Oops, sorry. Me before others. There was a book written by Willick and Bobbin. They were, I don't know if anybody's read it, it's called Extreme Ownership. They were on the Navy SEALs group that went after Bin Laden. And they wrote a book about extreme ownership. And what they mean by extreme ownership is this. Extreme ownership argues that the best leaders take full responsibility for everything in their world, not only their own decisions, not only their own actions and failures. They don't always but they do it for everyone on their team. You gotta remember, when in the Navy SEALs, when things break down, when communication goes wrong, or someone does something wrong, you don't lose a basketball or lose a deal. You lose lives. And in some respects, sometimes you'll lose, many lives, hundreds of lives. So they have to be extremely clear on the way they do things. But let me give you an example. I'm driving home after a loss. And of course, my wife is sitting right next to me. And we're driving home. And I'm like, slapping the wheel, getting mad, thinking about things. And she's over here saying, what happened to LA tonight? He couldn't make a basket. And then a minute later, what's wrong with Justin? He's just not playing like he used to. What happened to our defense? We usually play better defense than that. Well, she doesn't understand that everything that she's saying is on me. It's not on LA. If LA's not shooting the ball well or not getting good shots, that's on me. Because I didn't create that for him. If Justin's not playing well, then maybe it's because I haven't been able to find ways to get him open so he can get good shots. Or we didn't play good defense, I didn't get our guys ready tonight. You know, I was maybe a little soft, maybe last week in practice I wasn't working hard enough. So if I continue to let them, I just say, oh, it's all LA's fault, or it's all Justin's fault, then nothing is ever corrected. But if I bring it on to me, now I no longer deflect that responsibility. Responsibility is mine. So when they screw up, that's my responsibility. And that's what we mean by extreme ownership. You have to take ownership for everything that goes on in your organization. I know we have some military people here, and the idea is that when they're screwing up there, it's the head honchos that got to take the responsibility, not the ones down here. And I think that again, it was one of those epiphanies that really started to change my style of coaching, where I started to look deeper than just superficially easy to blame. Easy to blame the referees, easy to blame here. But realizing that ultimately it's my responsibility. I want things to change, I have to make the changes. It's got to be on me. And that's a really important issue I think that everybody needs to take on. Well, I'm almost done. 1 point win. I think, again, Alvin Leo might remember that expression, 1 point win. It's an expression we've used for a long time. It has to do with expectations. When we walk into a basketball game, we want to walk in with the idea that we're going to get a 1 point win. So we'll be in the huddle together, we're about ready to go out to the thing, and I'll just say, so what are we expecting tonight, guys?
What do I mean by that? I mean, the things that made you viable in the past aren't going to be the things that make you viable moving forward. You better be continually getting better. As long as you sit in rooms like this, I ain't doing my job if I'm not pointing that out. You guys that have been here and know what it's about, man, we expect you to be significantly better. Hear the words. You were a young guy, man, we might have tolerated little errors a year ago. We'll have less tolerance for it moving forward. It's just a reasonable expectation. And so let's just be really transparent, man, about expectations in this business, about how competitive it is. I never want you worried about people on the outside, even the man sitting next to you. This is a man versus himself battle. You gotta be continually pressing to get better with that understanding that this is a highly competitive line of work that we're in.
So these are the things that he says. And again, I hope you were able to catch all of it. But basically he says, we expect you to be better in everything that you do. In other words, over time, you've got to get better at those are reasonable expectations that you get better over time. If you're standing still and not improving, then you're not living up to a reasonable expectation. You need to be a guy who is continually on the rise, continually getting better. That the things that made you viable in the past are going to be the things that make you viable moving forward. Like RJ Barrientos, he's one of our star players right now. He's a young guy, he's a rookie on our team. When he came into our team, we would call him the weak link. He was the weak link in our team. And not because he was the weakest player, not because he was the least talented player. On the contrary, he's probably our most talented player. But he was the weak link because he is of knowledge. He didn't know our way and the way we did things. Everything was new to him. So we gave him some latitude. When he didn't use his screen properly, you know, we would correct it, but we wouldn't make a big deal. When he would take a bad shot, which he did a lot, he took a lot of bad shots when he first came to our team, we would talk to him about it, but we wouldn't make a big deal about it. But we also made him understand that we expected him to get better, to get more understanding, to continually be on the rise as it is. And so the things that he did a year later were important, the things he did a year ago were no longer viable for the things he had to do now. So now our expectations are going up for him. So that's reasonable. And again, for him to be able to do this, it's a man versus himself battle. He has to be able to be the one to do that. I could talk a whole lot on that expectations, but we're running out of time, and I know guys got to get home, so I'll jump really to the last issue, and that's the art of moving on. I'm big on moving on. Once a game is over, it's over. You know, I think that moving on from wins is often more difficult than moving on from losses. You don't want the next game to be affected by the last game, so you have to learn to move on. You can't sit with regrets. And I think that's not only a basketball truth, it's a life truth as well. You can't live in what's happened. So the thing is, when something bad has happened and you lose a game, you kind of want to put it away and get back on the saddle and do it again. If you won and it feels good, sometimes you don't want to move on anymore. You want to stay back on that thing and feel that some more, so you don't have an opportunity to move on. So this, again, another thing that I saw a quote from Phil Jackson, and this is what he said. You see Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant. He says, "I'm all about moving forward. Just deal with what is and move forward. If it's in the cards, man, we are fortunate. If it's in the cards, man, we are fortunate. If it's not in the cards, man, we are fortunate." So, good or bad, doesn't matter. We're going to move forward anyway. And I think that's basically one of the best skills that I've learned and developed, that art of moving on. And it's been so valuable in my basketball career. I was a dweller when I was young. I would dwell on each loss. That was his secret sauce to being a great coach. The art of moving on. And it's an art. It's an art. It doesn't come natural. It's something you really have to work at. You can't just dismiss it, but you do have to move on from it. And so those are the issues that I'm sorry, forgot the last one. Yesterday ended last night. Just a little story. Mark Boroka, our player from Kyrgyz, we'd be in the series and we would, always talk about moving on. We'd lose the game, and so, I'd go, "Mark, what do we do tonight?" And he goes, "Yesterday, I forgot." And so then, no longer would the Kyrgyz players say, "Yesterday ended last night." They would always end every game with, "Yesterday, I forgot." And that happened for 4 years. Every day, every big game, every day, they would say, "Yesterday, I forgot." But bottom line is, yesterday ended last night. Move on. So the last one here, these are the major issues that I spoke of. Culture, process, accountability, extreme ownership, reasonable expectations, and moving forward. These are the ones that I really, really try to focus on. There are multiple other ones, things that you can talk about. You can talk about players that don't buy in, difficult personalities, things of that issue as well. There's so many things but these are the things when I walk into a team, or walk into a camp, or I walk into Gilas, these are the first things that I start thinking of, and I start trying to solve as I walk in. And I think it's common to every team that you will come up against, or against every group. But again, every group is unique. I'm so sorry I went longer than I was supposed to. I always do this. And my apologies, but I hope at least I got through it. And thank you so much for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. Hope I did get a something.